As a follow-up to my earlier film about the changes resulting from the Crossrail project at Whitechapel Station, I thought I'd do a follow-up to show which parts of the station are still intact from the period of 1888. Most of the changes, in fact, occurred due to the extension of the Whitechapel Railway eastwards in 1902. But the Crossrail changes I'll also point out. Okay, we're back above ground on Brady Street. This is the end of Winthrop Street, what was the end of Winthrop Street. If we look on the map here, we're standing about here. This was Winthrop Street. It's all been knocked down by this new development. And down here we can see the end of what was Bucks Row. This is where PC Neal, 130 yards up Bucks Row, supposedly spotted PC Thane walking across it. I didn't spot him, heard him. Yet we are to believe that Robert Paul, as he came round the corner here from his house, just behind Sainsbury's there, he didn't notice Lechmere walking 30 or 40 yards in front of him all the way down. And Robert Paul would have had his wits about him because he thought that Bucks Row is a particularly dangerous street, so he would have been aware of his surroundings, surely, yet he didn't notice Lechmere walking 40 yards in front of him all the way down. Anyway, we're going round the corner now towards Whitechapel Station. And again, this is the stubby end, the other end of Winthrop Street, the bit that still sort of exists, and there's the original wall dividing it from the station and the railway lines below. H. Barber, that's an interesting connection. We're now around the corner on Whitechapel Road. This was a pub called the Queen's Head. These buildings here, Mr. Sweet is where Dr. Llewellyn's, the site of where Dr. Llewellyn's surgery was. He was the doctor who examined Polly Nichols and gave the post-mortem on her. Now, if you look at these buildings, they're all single story. The reason why they're single story is that from these buildings over here, the higher ones along, this section was demolished when they put in the tube line in Whitechapel Tube. The line was extended. It was Whitechapel itself was the end of the line. In 1902 they opened a new line quite a long time after the Jack Riff murders, and they extended the line, dug out a big cutting that came round here, so they had to demolish these houses here, which is why they're single story. They also demolished the pub. The pub is actually from 1904, 1905. So all this, Dr. Llewellyn's surgery and all this is later than the Jack Riff murders, because the railway line actually comes under here and goes up the middle of Whitechapel Road there. But again, it was built after the Jack Riff murders. The middle of all these houses was full of other houses at the time. There's other houses and yards and even an alleyway through here. So that is Brady Street, which is part of PC Thane's beat. This is Whitechapel Road, which was PC Neal's beat. There was another point policeman on point duty further down on Whitechapel Road. And this is the route I believe Lechmere took when he was in the mood. When he was in the mood for murder, it's my belief that he went to the main roads and found his victims there. I'm on the walkway, the public walkway, the new public walkway at Whitechapel Station. The building, the biggest building you can see there, is the back of the Working Lads Institute. Down here is the new cutting that I was telling you about, the new cutting that they dug out when they opened the line in 1902. None of this was here in 1888. There was buildings and so forth here. Harrison Barber Yard was where the second row of cars, those cars there, that was where Harrison Barber Yard was, and that tree, and stretching out into the cutting. This bit of the cutting and this where this car is here was the backyard of the Whitechapel Working Lads Institute. And roughly where that manhole is there was a man called Mulshaw. That's where the street was that we just looked at, that led along here, and that's where Mulshaw was on duty, a night watchman. There was 3 horse slaughter yards roughly where these cars are here, on duty at Harrison Barber, and Mulshaw was a night watchman on duty looking after some works in the street right there. And just over here, just this side of that cream coloured building, is where Polly Nichols was murdered, a very short distance away. Now I'm having to pay to come in this station, and people that know me know I'm extremely mean. I don't like doing that. Down there is the District line. Down here is the East London line. We're going to take a look at the East London line first. In 1888, this railway was operated by the East London Railway Company. In 1933 it became part of the London Underground as the East London line. It closed in 2010 and was refurbished as the East London line on the Underground, although it's very deep. As we see, there's that flight of stairs and there's more stairs up here. These parts are still inaccessible. I think that's because the Crossrail station, which hasn't opened yet, is going to be even further down, even deeper. So we go down further. On the 6th of September, a newspaper interviewed someone called Harriet Lilly, who lived up on Bucks Road, number 7, a week after the murder, where she claimed she was woken up by a train coming in here from New Cross, a luggage train, a goods train, coming in through this deep cutting, woke her up, and she heard voices in the street about 3:30. People have claimed that this exonerates Lechmere on the grounds that it was some 10-15 minutes sooner than he would have been on the scene. The police didn't invite her to the inquest. They didn't mention any reports suggesting they didn't believe her story. This is roughly where Harriet Lilly lived, and the track where she said she heard the train from, the luggage train, was down on the other side, quite far below, on the other side of that wall over there. Now the significance of the Harriet Lilly story is that it shows that the police, as late as the 6th of September, had failed to interview most of the residents down Bucks Road and hadn't done a very good job of interviewing and talking to people, potential witnesses in the case. I'm on the southbound platform of the East London line. Above me, the ceiling goes different texture to it for this little section here. This is directly under Durward Street, Bucks Road. Polly Nichols was murdered just where the junction of the pipe is on the other side of the wall. That's almost exactly where she was murdered. I'm on the northbound platform now. We can see the brown roof there. That is Durward Street crossing over the top, and the platform extended a long way further north than Durward Street, which I didn't appreciate. The light at the end of the tunnel up here, if we come out and have a look, we can see the platform going way down there, and that this area down there is where the train line went towards Shoreditch and right round the corner up there. But Durward Street was and Bucks Road was quite a long way back there. The platform was completely under the whole lot of it, which I didn't quite realise before. Now we're going to take a look at the District line platform, what we can see from there. We're on the main concourse, but from here, if you see those trees through there, that's through the gap in the single-storey houses. The reason you can see the trees is because that's where the single-storey houses are on Whitechapel Road, the ones that are knocked down where Dr. Llewellyn's surgery was. Here we get a good view down Wood's buildings with the gate actually open. You can see the blocked off end. This is from the upper stairs of the District line platform. Over in this direction we see the board school and the wall of Winthrop Street, and there you can even see the back of the sign of Winthrop Street that we looked at earlier. We're on the District line platform now. We're going to travel on it walking from the eastern side we are now to the western end. We're now on the westbound platform of the District line. Down here we can see the East London line is quite significantly lower down, and there's actually a train there now that's going to probably pull out in a second. Further down we can see the cutting that was dug out for the extension in 1902. Where I am now, the line ended, the station ended here. This was all built up. In 1888, this district line ended here, and this, where this train's coming now, was all built up still, hadn't been dug out. That roof over there is the Whitechapel Working Lads Institute, that barrel-shaped roof. Here is the end of Wood's Buildings. There was a metal bridge that came all the way across here, up here, over to here. And where the wall is a different colour is where was the entrance to Wood's Buildings. There, of course, is the Board School. Mulshaw, the white night watchman on Winthrop Street, was stationed just over here. The police at the time obviously searched the track and the track of the East London line further below, looking primarily for the murder weapon or other piece of evidence. Obviously came up with nothing. This is the bridge at Court Street. I believe it's still the original iron workings for it. We're back on ground level at Court Street, which I think is the most likely route that the culprit took Polly Nichols to meet her death. Whether that culprit was Lechmere or anyone else, I obviously think it was Lechmere, but whoever it was, I think met her along this section of Whitechapel Road, where she would find customers and he would find a victim. And we'll go up Court Street now. Court Street, the next street up, Thomas Street, is unlikely in my opinion because it's a bit further from where she was found if you come out at Thomas Street, and there are other places she may have gone rather than Brown Stable Yard, I think. It's the other location that's quite popular with people, or a suggestion of, is Wood's Buildings, which is further down this way. I think it's unlikely that Wood's Buildings was used by her, because if he had met her and taken her down Wood's Building, she had taken him down Wood's Buildings, it was a very dark, narrow opening. It's beloved by ripperologists because it was when you had access to it, because it was atmospheric. But he wouldn't have gone somewhere atmospheric for ripperologists. He would have gone somewhere practical for him and practical for her, the conducting of her business. The trouble with Wood's Buildings is it was straight on the street, and would she have taken him straight into a place like that? I don't think so. Secondly, if we look at Wood's Buildings, it's got a very narrow entrance, then it widens out. And in these areas where it widens out, there's two alcoves where she would have gone to conduct a business. If she did go down Wood's Buildings, she wouldn't have gone past those alcoves and onto Bucks Row, because those alcoves are actually a more discreet spot than where she ended up in Bucks Row. So if she went down Wood's Buildings, she'd have conducted her business in Wood's Buildings, not in Bucks Row. That's what I think. If we look at this map, we can just see how the narrow opening of Wood's Buildings here, and these sorts of alcoves, that would have been a convenient little spot for her to do it if she did it there. But I don't believe that's the case. That's why I believe it was almost certainly on Court Street. We'll go up to the end. That's where we were, just underneath here a minute ago. See, and this is Bucks Row, and over there's the board school, so it's quite easy access from Court Street to Bucks Row. And this is the bridge at the far western end of Whitechapel Station platform, is the bridge for Thomas Street / Fulbourn Street. Now the building here with the window is quite interesting in its own right, because in 1907 the 5th Congress of the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party took place in London. The Bolshevik faction, there was a very strong Bolshevik faction in it, had a breakaway meeting that took place in a building that was there. It was attended by Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky and loads of other quite well-known communists, and they did a lot of their plotting for the Communist Revolution there. I used to, until I came here and saw it from this direction and had a close look, think it was the original building, but it's very clear to me now that that isn't the original building. They must have demolished it and replaced it, because there's no way that's a building that was here in 1907, but that is the right location for it. So I'm on Whitechapel Road, back on ground level. PC Neal on his beat would have come down Whitechapel Road and turned up what was Thomas Street, now Fulbourn Street. Now, up there where it says Fulbourn Street, there's a painted out sign, as you can see underneath it, that would have said, I'm sure if that's cleaned up it would say Thomas Street. And over on this side here, later in the Jack the Ripper murders, this building was used as a peep show, like Chamber of Horrors, where they dressed up waxworks as the victims and people paid a few pennies to come in and be suitably horrified. We'll carry on PC Neal's beat. He would have been trying these doors. As he was on his beat, he would have been trying these doors, making sure they're all locked. This is the building, or the site of the building, where that 1907 Bolshevik meeting took place. But as I said, now 100% convinced it's not the original building, it's just the site of where the building was. And PC Neal would have turned this way to go down to the crime scene at Crossrail. We didn't know it was a crime scene, obviously, at the time. Now I'll just show you on the map where we've just been. We came up Thomas Street. This is actually called Thomas Street up here as well. If we have a look up here, that was also called Thomas Street. The continuation of it here. The the context of how it's described by PC Neal, he clearly came around here. I went to the board school. As he turned the corner here, Lechmere and Paul must have just been crossing here. He must have just missed them from line of sight, as they went this way and he came this way. And as he came to the top of Thomas Street, near where we are now, and turned that way, they must have been turning up this way into Baker's Row or Valence Road to meet PC Misen here, and Neal went over this way. There is a theorist, a Kosminski theorist, who claims that PC Neal was up this side of Thomas Street. He only says that because he wants these streets to be clear to allow his suspect Kosminski to escape. If PC Neal had been up this side of Thomas Street, as it's a much longer stretch, when Paul and Lechmere walked this way, he would have seen them. He would have seen them from up here, from up this road here. I'll now go through a couple of maps to help orientate viewers. Someone mentioned that it would be very useful after watching the previous video to follow where I was actually going all the way through it. So we'll go through a couple of maps now. The first isn't actually a map, it's a very recent overhead photograph which neatly shows the changes made as a result of the railway extension that was completed in 1902 and the more recent Crossrail works that have been completed so far. So we've got the railway cutting which goes right through what was the Harrison Barber yard and the rear parts of the Whitechapel Working Lads Institute, but leaving the main building of the Whitechapel Working Lads Institute intact. As that railway extension, which goes all the way up to Mile End and out into East Ham, West Ham and so forth, as that railway extension, the deep cutting there, swoops down towards Whitechapel Road, that's why those buildings had to be reduced to one story, the ones marked in red, which is where Dr. Llewellyn's surgery used to be. Above the Harrison Barber Yard and the Whitechapel Working Lads Institute, marked in red, is the old line of Winthrop Street, which no longer exists. The stubby sort of end of Winthrop Street can perhaps be seen to the left of the station by the, you might be able to see the school building, and just off that we have the location of the old bridge that went across the station for Wood's buildings, and the location where Polly Nichols was murdered is marked with a yellow cross on Durwood Street, which is obviously used to be called Bucks Row. The next map is the 1893 Ordnance Survey map, which shows essentially the same area. In yellow I've marked the areas which are still in place, which are there in 1888. There are other buildings in the vicinity which are still there from 1888, but they're not relevant particularly to this story. So from left to right we have the bridge at Thomas Street, now Fulbourn Street. Then we've got the metal bridge at Court Street. Then we come to Wood's buildings, the part that's still there that's now inaccessible. The bridge, of course, is no longer there, and the wall on the northern side with the gap in where the opening to Wood's buildings used to be. Just above that is the Board School. Then we have the subterranean platform for the East London Railway, and then the actual building of the Working Lads Institute. In green I've marked the buildings which are no longer there. So we have the building on Fulbourn Street, or Thomas Street as it used to be, where in 1907 Lenin and the Bolsheviks had their meeting. Just put that there for reference purposes. We have the playground of the Working Lads Institute, which was eliminated when the railway was extended, that opened in 1902. Harrison Barber Yard, which was similarly demolished with that railway extension, and Dr. Llewellyn's surgery, which again was demolished due to that railway extension. I've also marked some of the key witnesses in red. So we have Mull Shaw, who was the night watchman looking after some building works on Winthrop Street. We have the 3 Harrison Barber horse slaughterers. Then we've got Robert Paul, who was approaching the crime scene, who was first seen by Lechmere at a distance of 30 to 40 yards. The victim, Polly Nichols, is marked with the purple cross. The distance between Lechmere and Paul shows in stark contrast the distance between P.C. Neal, which was roughly the same location as Lechmere, and P.C. Thane. P.C. Neal said he could hear P.C. Thane walking past Brady Street there, whereas Lechmere and Paul weren't aware of each other until they were 30 or 40 yards apart, whereas they'd been supposedly walking almost in tandem all the way down Bucks Row prior to that, but were oblivious to each other. The red line shows the line of sight of P.C. Neal down towards Baker's Row, which is now Valence Road. This shows or illustrates what I described in the preceding episode of this series, that it was implausible or impossible really for P.C. Neal to have seen P.C. Misen on Baker's Row, or if he did, it meant that P.C. Misen wasn't going to Bucks Row, but he'd walked past the end and was walking down towards Whitechapel Road, and it was a tiny couple of yards that Neal could have seen him if he'd stood in one particular spot on the opposite side of the road to where Polly Nichols was murdered. So it's totally implausible. I've marked in blue the route that PC Misen would have been taking, which would have put him out of sight of PC Neil until he was some distance up White's Road, or more likely up into Bucks Row, depending on exactly where PC Neil was standing. If PC Neil was near the body, PC Misen would have probably got within about 50 yards of him, or 100 yards, before PC Neil would have even seen him. I've also marked in blue the most likely route that PC Neil took on his beat from Whitechapel Road up Thomas Street and round into Bucks Road towards the crime scene. From the very bowels of Whitechapel, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share.